Alex Osimo Baker. He's just got a grin on his face. He's ready. He's ready for this Thursday night slate because we don't have to watch Jacksonville and Tennessee battle it out for 4 horrible quarters. Alex, what's happening?
Not much, man. I mean, Gardner Minshew, pretty exciting to watch. This week we only have Aaron Rodgers and Carson Wentz, so that's a big downgrade, but we'll make it work.
And with us as well, we have Ben Rasa, currently sweating the World Badminton Championships.
I wish. That would be no, this is going to be fun. These are two. We were talking a little before the show. I think it's interesting. We've seen both of these teams already on a showdown slate, even though we're in week 4. So I'm interested to see if there's any carryovers from what happened in those games and how people really approach these teams the second time around.
Yeah, absolutely. No, before we dive in here, let's thank our sponsor, Fantasy Draft. If you haven't checked out Fantasy Draft before, head on over there, fantasydraft.com. The Hooters main event is back, $700,000 in guaranteed money, $28 entry, $100,000 top prize. It's rake-free DFS. Better than high rakes is rake-free DFS. So I've been playing over there a lot, and it's my pitch every time. I've been playing over there a lot because of that reason. And they have monthly plans there. So if you're it's dedicated to how you want to play. So if you just want to play under $100 every week, then you can do that, and it's free. If you want to do under 1,000, under 3,000, they have monthly plans, and the rakes end up being far less, and end up being essentially no rake tournament. So head on over there, check it out, yeah, let's dive into this game, gents. We have the Packers and the Eagles. The Eagles visiting the Packers are I think the Packers are 4-point favorites, and we have 47 game total. Alex, what's your general thoughts for this? What are your first impressions of this slate?
I've been building some lineups on both Draftkings and Fanduel for the single game, and I'm finding that really the Packers are much easier to get to than the Eagles, at least based on my projections. Just the pricing is more favorable, so I'm getting a lot of the Packers, but the spread is only 4, so I mean it should be a tight game. And I think that creates some interesting opportunities where maybe the ownership's going to be a little bit low on certain guys. But we can, as sharps, seize the day by maybe going to some Eagles that might be going under the radar a little bit.
Oh, I like it. Ben, what do you have to say?
It's an interesting game. The Eagles, it's not dire by any stretch, but at the same time, you lose this game, you're 1-3, then it starts to become pretty dire. Now the Packers, they've looked pretty good, not as explosive as we've seen, but clearly this defense is better. I think we all can say that. How good they are remains to be seen. So it's a game where, from what I've seen, the total kind of dropping a bit. We'll see where it closes at. And it should be a back-and-forth game. The Eagles have the firepower. I know they're a little banged up. They've got some guys back. We're going to get into all that. It's a pretty good Thursday night game between two competitive NFC teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just got word the NFL or the inactives are starting to come out right now. Ronald Darby's out for the Eagles, the hamstring injury. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. That might not necessarily be a downgrade. I'm not sure who they're starting. I haven't had a chance to look yet. Deshaun Jackson also out tonight with an abdominal strain. Alshon Jeffrey was not on the injury report today, so he is going to be back, which may put Arcega-Whiteside to the bench. As of yet, we do not have the Packers inactives, but we will get you those as soon as they come out. I'd imagine they're coming out on NFL.com as I speak, pretty much. So, what stands out to you about the pricing on this slate, Ben? Is there anyone that stands out that you think is overpriced or underpriced?
So I think it's pretty typical. Alex kind of alluded to this already. I think captain certainly on DraftKings is going to be dominated by the two big Packers when you're talking about Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and even on FanDuel, that predominantly you've got options with Packers up there. If you don't use Carson Wentz, your next best options are going to be guys like Alshon and Ertz, who, that's a pretty against the grain captain over there on FanDuel. So the guy that's going to be very polarizing, and I know we're jumping around a bit, and you said this before the show, Matt Collins is very cheap. He's still going to have a role on this team in 3 wide sets. He seems like the obvious, pay down last man in with the defenses and kickers. But overall, up top, I didn't see anything that really stood out. I think the big playmakers for the Packers are the main guys, and then we have a ton of Eagles to choose from.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's going to be most people's sentiment as well. Just looking at Awesomo's top showdown and single game plays for Draftkings and Fanduel, we have captain ownership. It's looking like Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers stand out far and above the crowd, totaling of almost 40% of that captain ownership. So that's going to be the most common build tonight, and it's really hard to get away from those guys. Alex, you have them projected for about 50% chance between the two of them as being the top scorer on this slate.
Yeah, and I think that kind of understates them because like so often, like they're going to be having great games in the same games. So if you have them both in your lineup, I mean, you have a tremendous chance of getting the two highest scorers of the day, and that's a pretty nice bonus. I mean, these guys have great chances of being the top scorers, so their ownership is totally justified. And you're going to have to make a choice. Do you want to go maybe sneaky at the captain spot? Get a guy like maybe Alshon Jeffrey or Aguilar or someone that's low owned? Or do you want to go chalk at captain and then maybe have some sneaky picks to fill out your roster?
Interesting. Well, I'm sure we're going to get into all of that today. Let's just start out with breaking down some of these positions from each of these two teams. Start off with the Packers. Ben Rossa, Aaron Rodgers, is he doing anything for you? We have a pretty weak Philadelphia Eagles secondary this year. It looks so far, and Darby's out.
It's pretty damn good, yeah. I mean, this is a situation it's hard not to like at home. Again, now I don't know. It's only 3 weeks. I'm not going to draw too many conclusions, but there are, I don't even want to say rumblings. It looks like Rodgers is taking more of a game manager role early, where the Packers are saying, you know what, don't turn the ball over, do what you do, but we can hold these teams to 20 points, so you don't need to score 40 anymore. Doesn't mean in a matchup like this where he can't have a huge game. You mentioned the Eagles. The way to attack them is certainly not on the ground. Their front seven is still really good. The secondary is where the weak links are. So Rodgers, Devontae Adams has not found the end zone yet. Probably going to change tonight, I have a feeling. I really like the spot for him. And I think even if they're up, that Rodgers should have his best game, best output of the season.
Well, we've seen a lot so far this year in these showdown slates that wide receiver seems to be the place to go, a captain spot, at least thus far. I don't know if it's a trend or what. Great point there, Ben, as well, about his Aaron Rodgers being kind of moved to a game manager, and the Packers just changing their offense a little bit. Last year, they led the league in passing play percentage. This year, they're 23rd in passing play percentage. So that's kind of a pretty big change. I mean, they've had the coaching change as well, so that's going to affect things. The problem with going with any of these Packers running backs is we have no idea who's going to get the ball. It looks like Jamal Williams is going to be the guy. Alex, what are you doing with Aaron Rodgers tonight?
So the funny thing is that when they let Mike McCarthy go, or I guess he technically resigned, everyone was speculating that Aaron Rodgers wanted to call the shots, maybe call his own number more. But we've seen the opposite. We've seen a lot of Aaron Jones, a lot of Jamal Williams running the ball out. They played a game against the Broncos, who don't have a very strong offense. The Bears, who are kind of middle of the road, only scored 3 points that game. The Vikings were really the best team that they played so far, at least the most competitive game. So since they've won all 3 games, I would expect their running to be a little bit higher than we can expect going forward. They have about it's probably between like 60 and 65% chance of winning tonight's game. I haven't looked at the money line, but that kind of chance, I mean, that means it's probably going to be a competitive game, and their best weapon is the passing attack. So I think this could be a game where Rodgers and Adams have a big one, or if Packers get off to an early lead, then we might see a lot of Jones and Williams.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's like you always talk about building a narrative when you're building your lineups. So let's get into these Packers receivers then. There are pretty much 3 options at wide receiver, and then you have Jimmy Graham, who seems to be phased out of this offense, though maybe that's just an aberration from the past 2 games. So we have Devontae Adams getting a 91% snap count, snap percentage. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 88%, and then Geronimo Allison, who everyone kind of thought might be the breakout player, running about half his routes in the slot at 46%. Ben, what do you like from these three? It looks like we have Allison as the bargain of the three, but probably for good reason, given those numbers and the routes run numbers.
Pretty low variance unit, in my opinion. Davante Adams is the clear-cut number one. Now, MVS right now, target-wise, is right with him, but I think that during the year we're going to see the separation, and when the Packers really need it, Rodgers is going to Adams. There's no doubt in my mind. Allison is a guy that, I think I remember when week one, there was a lot of questions about who's going to assert themselves as that number two receiver. Is it going to be MVS? Is it going to be Allison? As you talked about, right now he's clearly playing kind of that third fiddle in there more as a dart throw kind of with the tight ends. So if you're going, you got to look to one of the two. Certainly if you're using Rodgers in the captain spot, you're going to want at least one of these guys, probably two. For me, it would be Adams and one kind of dart throw, and then work down from there, because that's really the way the Packers hierarchy is working these days.
Alex, what do you think?
I think Geronimo Allison could be kind of an under-the-radar option. I'm expecting him to be pretty low owned. He's the third receiver as far as playing time. He sees about a little bit more in half of the snaps, but he's productive when he's on the field. So if we get some positive variance and he sees the field more often than normal, maybe if the Packers are down, they'll run more 3 wide receiver sets. That could spell out a big game for Allison. He's a good player, just not seeing the field a ton. So he's someone on my radar. And then, of course, Marquez Valdez-Scantling has been performing very well, and I expect nothing less going forward. And Adams, probably the top projected skill position player of the slate. So I don't think you can go wrong with any of these three guys.
Yeah, it sounds, just looking at our numbers here, it looks a lot like people are kind of on Valdez-Scantling, at least relative to his chance of being the top player in the slate. We haven't projected for more captain ownership than his likelihood to be the top scorer. Allison as well. Do you find, Alex, just a general question, that more often than not, the ownership isn't even high enough in the captain spot on these highly projected players?
There's a tremendous advantage to going to the chalk players as your captain. I want to talk a little bit about Fanduel and Draftkings separately, because we got a request from one of our guys in Slack to talk more Fanduel today. On Draftkings, sure, when you got 1.5x salary for your captain spot, what you're gonna find if you go with a cheap captain like Geronimo Allison, it becomes very difficult to build the rest of your lineup in a way that is different from anyone else with Geronimo Allison, because you just have to spend so much salary, and you can't really go for the sneaky plays. But if you go for a guy like Davante Adams, then you have to be a lot more creative with the rest of your lineup, because he costs so much more. And because of that, I think there are a lot more good combinations with Adams at captain than maybe a punt play like the Packers D or Geronimo Allison.
Makes sense. And I guess so on FanDuel, you're not paying that extra money, so you're more likely to pop in that top player, or are you? Sorry, maybe I misunderstood. Are you saying that not putting in that top player forces you to be a little bit more contrarian?
So I'm saying the guys you have around, if you in FanDuel, you're not changing the amount of salary you're spending on your captain. So really, You're just trying to place your highest scoring guy in the captain spot, and that doesn't affect the combination of players you have. So as untenable as it might be to put a contrarian play in the captain spot because you're not getting good value for them, the creativity you can get with that kind of lineup is a little bit better than DraftKings, because not everyone will have the same combination of players.
Right, makes total sense. Words of wisdom. All right, I like it. Let's move on from these Green Bay wide receivers and talk a little bit about Jimmy Graham. Ben, is he at all viable? I think he has 2 targets in his last 2 games. He's running routes about 30% or on about 30% of passing plays. Is he washed? What's going on with Graham?
Well, the great thing about Showdown is I can say that he's probably washed and he's in play. That's really what we're dealing with here. He's going to have to find the end zone. We saw that in week one. That's really his only value. So I guess you can look to him now. I don't think I would even remotely consider him. Alex just talked about, really, really sharply about kind of how you want to structure your captain. He is not someone I would even remotely consider there just because I don't see many ways where he explodes. If I'm going to pay down, I'm still looking for someone who could break off a 60-yard touchdown and get really lucky. Jimmy Graham is not that. So I guess you could use him if you're looking for that cheap touchdown, but Packers have a couple other tight ends. They have other priorities. It's not a guy that I used outside. More of when I have some Rodgers, I sprinkled him in.
Alex, what about Mercedes Lewis and Robert Tonyan? I noticed Tonyan was getting some value in your projections.
Yeah, I assume that he is one of the cheapest plays on the slate. Is he like?
Oh yeah, I think he's 800 on Draftkings, and not quite sure how much he is on FanDuel, but he's he got about I think he got about 17% snap share. Mercedes Lewis actually led the team last week, so I'm starting to wonder if this is just basically going to be like a three-headed kind of rotation or what. But it certainly seems like Graham is on the outs a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that usually going to these real cheapies, especially Mercedes Lewis, I think that NFL fans know who he is. They're going to recognize that he's going to see the field, and for that reason, he might be a little bit higher owned than you might expect. Robert Tonyan, on the other hand, is a more unknown player, but someone that is on the field, does get targeted a little bit, and he's been successful when he has gotten the targets. I'm still not finding myself ending up on him just because he's projected so low, but he'd be my preferred option of the two.
All right. I like it. If you're looking for a cheap flyer to throw in your lineups, maybe a few times, but not much more than that, one of those guys might. I think, Ben, you hit the nail on the head. You're just kind of hoping for that random touchdown. Running backs here, we have Jamal Williams actually out-snapping Aaron Jones right now, or at least it was in last week. Are you touching this backfield at all, Ben?
I mean, I think you have to, it's Showdown, so you have to really look to them. But the strength of the Eagles' defense is right up the middle. That front seven is no joke. You see the discrepancy in the DVOA. So I don't love it because, again, there's a real chance that the Packers' running game is shut down completely. And even if it's not, you still have to pick which one of these two gets there. So it's, as I try to relate on each show, you're almost having to get it right twice. And that's not a situation I love. Aaron Jones is pretty expensive as well. So it's not the easiest build with him in there. I kind of think that makes him more appealing in a way because I'm not sure how popular he'll even be relative to some of the other top guys. But overall, with the Packers, I'm so much more apt to go through the aerial attack and just let other people chase this running back situation.
Yep, you hit on DVOA there. Philadelphia 22nd in DVOA against the pass, 4th in DVOA against the run. So this is as much a funnel pass offense as there is in the league, I think, this year, and it's going to be tough to run the ball on them. And then you factor in that we just have no idea what's going on with this running game. I think that what you said there makes a lot of sense. Alex, are you on board with that?
I like Williams and Aaron Jones. I gotta be a little contrary here. There is
on the contrary. Save it for Saturday, Alex.
Yeah, sorry. So I think one thing about Showdown is you don't necessarily need to score a high score with your lineup. You just need your guys to be the highest scorers. And what's going to happen a lot of the time is because every play that Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams run the ball, they're the only ones getting points. That creates scenarios where they might be the highest scorers, but the rest of the game doesn't have any good players in it. So I think they are valuable in the captain position. And then Jamal Williams is just too cheap on DraftKings, at least at 5K. He has been getting a lot of the workload. I'm ending up with a ton of him. And then on FanDuel as well at 9K, kind of a mid-range guy. He's cheaper than Mason Crosby, and he's not a kicker. So that's enough reason.
That's pretty good. Yeah, he had 12 rushing attempts last time out against the Denver Broncos. Two targets, two receptions, two targets, 27 yards. His role looks pretty well defined there, and it looks like he's at the very least splitting, if not getting more touches than Jones, which is perplexing to everyone. But it is what it is. All right, let's wrap things up with the Packers. Move on to the Eagles and talk about what's going on with them. I'm just going to check inactives here. Ben, any general thoughts on Carson Wentz tonight?
Well, I mean, it's not his fault that these guys can't catch. He's just got to keep doing what he's doing. He put them in a position to win last week, and he gets Alshon back. That's going to be a boost. Dallas Goedert is back, who's not a prolific pass catcher, but he really does help that offense. Our boy Lofty, who was at the game, always talks about that, and he's certainly the Eagles expert on the staff. So I do think I expect them to move the ball. We'll get to the running backs. That's really the situation I think that has most difficult to break down. But overall, this is an offense that is going to test how good this Packers defense is.
Yep, agree with that. It's really going to come down to how you're able to pair up Wentz and how you're able to fit in these wide receivers, because they are actually quite expensive, as Alex alluded to. Because they're pricey, it makes them a little bit difficult. And then you kind of have to factor in that the Packers secondary has been much improved this year. Alex, what are you doing with Carson Wentz for this slate?
I have a lot of them because he's a quarterback, and especially on FanDuel, quarterbacks get a huge bonus compared to running back and wide receiver because of the half-point PPR. That means that whenever they throw a touchdown or throw a bunch of yards to a receiver, they still have a much higher chance of being the top scorer despite that than on Draftkings, where it's easier for receivers to accumulate points. Wentz, I think, isn't as good a play as Rodgers. He doesn't run the ball as well. He's more expensive than Rodgers, I believe, and I just don't project him to be nearly as effective when he does throw the ball. So I'm not.
We have him for 800 less than Rodgers.
Oh, is he really? Okay.
Yeah.
I must have looked at it wrong then, but yeah, he doesn't offer a ton of fantasy value like normally. Since it is Showdown, I mean, he's going to be in a lot of lineups because if you're building an Eagle stack, you want him in there if you have two of Jeffrey, Aguilar, Hollins, and Ertz. And with Hollins being so cheap as an option, that makes Wentz a little bit nicer of a play because you can easily get two of his receivers.
All right. Well, nice transition there to Mac Hollins. Let's get into these Eagles wide receivers. One thing I'm a little bit worried about with this Eagles passing attack, I mentioned a little bit about the Packers secondary, who's been elite this year. Jair Alexander, number 1 ranked cornerback in PFF grades. Jamal Williams isn't far behind. I think he's in the top 20 as well. Ben, are you a little bit scared off of these Eagles wideouts because of those two?
A little bit. Jair Alexander, I mean, Emmanuel Sanders, that was impressive. He's really good. It's a guy that I saw a bit in college. Didn't think he would be this good, and Packers really hit that draft pick. So it's someone that's stabilizing the back end of them. Now we'll see what he does in terms of the one thing about the Eagles is they don't have, like for the Packers, you take away Devontae Adams, that, for lack of a better word, can cripple the entire passing attack. The Eagles spread it around a little more. They also have Zach Ertz. So I'm not sure exactly what you are going to do if you're the Packers here. It opens it up for guys like Mac Hollins. We mentioned Aguilar. Alshon is back. So there are guys to go to. I don't really love any of them, to be honest, in a captain's role. I think they fill out nicely on some of your lineups if you're running it back. But I'm much more predominantly Packers captain tonight on both sites. Just feel like that's the more optimal build.
All right, I like it. Alex, what about you?
Are we saying captain? Sorry.
Oh, just general thoughts on the Eagles receivers groups and what you're doing with them. Are you using any of them in the captain spot? I'm assuming you said you're pairing 2 of them with Wentz, and just like who's standing out to you?
Yeah, if I have Eagles captain, I'm probably going with one of the receivers. I mean, that's not exactly a stretch, but I like Ertz in the captain. I have a lot of Aguilar as a flex play. I think that Mac Hollins is a core play. I think that most recreational NFL players probably heard about him last week, but he definitely doesn't have that name brand as some other guys. I'm hoping that JJ Arcega-Whiteside gets some ownership, despite the fact he probably won't get a lot of snaps with Alshon Jeffrey back in the lineup. So I think I'll have a mix of these guys, but probably not as much as the Packers receivers.
Yeah, makes sense. I think you hit the nail on the head there as well. Nelson Aguilar actually leading the entire game on both of these teams in routes run this year, 123 routes run. I think 25 higher than the next closest receiver or tight end on either of these teams. And then you have Mac Hollins, who is expected to continue to play with the return of Alshon Jeffrey tonight, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is expected to ride the pines. So I'm curious to see whether or not DFSers are going to be on to that news or not. Mac Hollins, would you pop him into the captain spot at all, Alex, or the top spot on FanDuel, or are you using him as more of a utility player?
I might have one or two lineups with Mac Hollins as captain, but I think he does meet the kind of guy I want as a utility player a lot more. Mostly, you get a good point per dollar for him, so that increases the projection of your lineup overall. And I'm hoping he's not overly popular compared to the kind of player he is. And I mean, a lot of times in Showdown, you just need someone that fits. That's not Mercedes Lewis. So
Correct.
That's Mac Hollins.
All right, final thoughts here, Ben. Alshon Jeffrey, are you at all worried about his calf injury coming back? He hasn't been on the injury report this week. Do you think he's going to be a full go this week? And and it looks like, I'm guessing he'll see a lot of Jair Alexander. Are you down on him because of that?
I'm more worried about the coverage than his calf, to be honest. It looks like he was a full participant, not on the injury report. It's just a really tough matchup. And the thing about the Eagles, as I kind of said earlier, I don't think that Wentz has to force him the ball. They have other weapons that they can go to, whereas someone like Devontae Adams on the other side, he's getting the ball, I think, no matter what, most weeks, regardless of who the coverage is. So there is a chance that, the Eagles, for lack of a better word, just sacrifice him, and they go to Wentz, they go to Hollins, they go to this running game that we'll talk about in a bit. And that could really stifle his production. But I think you want to look to some of them, just not sure it's Alshon Jeffrey this week.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about this running game before we get to the tight ends there. Miles Sanders, we have Jordan Howard possibly vulturing some TDs here, and we have maybe a sneaky Darren Sproles sighting. Just got the inactives as well for the Packers. I'm assuming they've been out for a while, but Dexter Williams not going, so it looks like they have two running backs in there. Jake Kumarov as well is out for them. So, Alex, what are your thoughts on this Philly running game? Are you worried about Miles Sanders having a little fumbleitis? Will you be getting to any Darren Sproles tonight, despite the fact that he got a high snap share but wasn't really targeted or involved in the offense last week?
I think people might have a little bit of recency bias about the fumbles. If that is something on people's minds, I think that Chris Carson showed this weekend that if you fumble again and you're in the doghouse, then you're really not going to get much action the rest of the game. But that's a big if. I mean, fumbles aren't that common in the NFL, so I'm not counting that any different than if my player just doesn't have a good game. Of course, there's a good chance of that no matter who you pick. So I don't mind Sanders. I probably won't have Howard because I see him as not having a clearly defined role compared to the other two. Because he really just runs the ball. Sanders is kind of like the dual threat, and then Sproles gets a lot of the third down and passing routes. So I see Sproles and Sanders as preferable, and Howard is kind of on the fringe of my interest.
Ben, what do you agree, disagree? Are you on Team Miles Sanders as well?
Dangerous team, but I am. Alex kind of just said it. I think that he's almost the hybrid of like Howard's going to take some of the rushing and share it with Sanders. Sproles is going to take some of the passing and share it with Sanders. He's the only one that does both. And yeah, he did fumble twice on the same drive, which is really not good. But you know what? They went back to him. He is someone that we saw has some upside in that passing game. And as stark as the splits are for the Eagles defense, the Packers defense is the same way, just reverse. You want to attack them on the ground. I think for Philly to have a really good chance in this game, they have to get something out of this rushing attack, and Sanders would be certainly the guy I think is favored to really have a big game on the ground for them.
No Darren Sproles love. I'm a little bit surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this, and this isn't breaking news. If you're looking to pair up your running backs with Wentz, certainly Sproles is a lot more viable than Jordan Howard in a build like that, because he's going to get some work, maybe in the passing game. But I'm starting to warm up to Miles Sanders. I think people will use the Carson thing and the fumbles as more of it is a deterrent. But at the same time, if everyone overreacts, it actually becomes an asset to rostering him.
So we said Philly 4th in run DVOA, 22nd in pass DVOA. You are exactly correct, Ben. Green Bay, the almost exact opposite. They are 3rd in pass DVOA and 22nd in run DVOA. So if you're game planning to beat these Packers, maybe a steady dose of Miles Sanders is the answer. As well, this red zone vulturing has probably been a little bit overblown. Miles Sanders still leading the team in attempts inside the 10-yard line and the 5-yard line. Albeit a small sample size, still 2 and 3 or something like that. But Jordan Howard's only had 1 red zone carry, or one carry inside the 5-yard line. So let's not get carried away. What are we doing with the tight ends tonight? We got Dallas Goedert, who looks to be healthier maybe. Only saw 12 snaps last game, and then we got Zach Ertz, who was double covered and saw a lot of was the focal point of that Detroit defense last week. Alex, are you high at all on Zach Ertz?
Yeah, I'm pretty high. I think Deshaun Jackson being out should give Ertz a little bit more of the target share. Matt Collins isn't quite as high volume a receiver. Of course, I'd like it even better if Alshon Jeffrey was out as well, but we're not dealing with that tonight. He's playing, so I'm not like over the moon on him, but he's going to be a core play. Probably my favorite captain of the Eagles because tight ends do tend to get a little bit more of the touchdown share compared to how much action they get in the passing game. And I have him already as the top receiver, so I think that he's the number one.
All right. I like it. Ben, similar opinion? Do you have any interest in Goddard?
I'm not sure I'm there with Goddard, but I will say that if you want to be very aggressive on FanDuel, I think you can use Zach Ertz as the captain. I know you're not, tendency is to just spend all the way up because you're not using the multiplier, but I think you can go there with Ertz. You said it, and you were not exaggerating. The Lions legitimately were double covering him basically all game, and he was a big disappointment. But what can you do? And at the same token of Alshon playing, I think that could be a good thing in the sense that it keeps the Packers somewhat honest. They cannot just say, you know what, we're going to devote 2 guys. There's too many other weapons for the Eagles, and that could be good for Ertz because step 1 is him getting a reasonable chance at single coverage. We know the upside. He could be 15-plus targets if he really gets going.
Green Bay, 3rd in the NFL in defending tight ends this year, but they were terrible last year. They ranked 27th. So, this defense is much improved. We'll have to see, but it might be a little bit too early to crown them an elite defense defending tight ends. So, I like where your head's at. I think maybe that Ertz is a sneaky play here, especially on FanDuel, where you're going to have people probably paying up as much as possible for the likes of Devontae Adams, Carson Wentz, and Aaron Rodgers. All right, let's get over to the most exciting portion of the show: kickers and defense.
Oh yeah,
this is where we need Alex's expertise. He's the kicker whisperer. He knows what's up. Alex, what are we doing with the kickers tonight?
If there were the best values on the slate, I would be a little bit keener on the kickers. But I think that there's some other options I like better. Mason Crosby is $3,600 on DraftKings. Very affordable price. But we got Matt Collins. He is $2,400, and I think that a little bit higher variance than a kicker, which is usually a good thing in GPPs. So he would be a preferred option to Crosby, and then I'm not even seeing the Eagles kicker in my lineups at all, so I guess I didn't land on him.
There you go. It's just this is going to be we're going to be relying on some touchdowns tonight. This is going to be it's going to be a shootout, and we're going to be fine. Ben, what about you? Are you in on either of these kickers?
I have some Mason Crosby as well. He's kicked at Lambeau for a long time. He's a quality kicker. LaFleur hasn't shown any ridiculous splits about not wanting to go, for a field goal in certain spots. So I'm not worried about any of that. Alex mentioned, though, one of the things with kickers is the opportunity cost. And when you have cheap guys that can get to scores that kickers basically just can't get to, it makes it a lot more difficult to roster them. And then you add in, I do think that the Packers defense will garner some ownership. They were, I believe, in the optimal in the opening showdown, and people do remember that stuff. So they've played really well so far this year. They're at home. I think they're going to be another pretty popular punt play on the slate.
Sorry, who was that? What was that? The
Packers. Yep.
Yeah, priced up a little bit. Hey, for sure. But that's another sneaky one. They've already won. They've already been in the optimal lineup this year. Though.
I do think people. I mean, again, it's anecdotal, but I think people say, the Thursday slates. You think about the past ones that you've played with this team, and the Packers defense was a key part of that opening game against the Bears. And they fit nicely in a lot of builds, especially if you think this game goes under the total. So I wouldn't be stunned to see them get some ownership.
Alex, what are you doing with these Ds?
I like them. I think that, this is DraftKings specific. Obviously, FanDuel doesn't have defense available. But the Eagles D makes a nice punt play. Cheaper than the kickers and higher upside. I did find Jake Elliott in my lineup, so I have him a little bit. But
okay,
I have more of the Eagles and the Packers. I think that usually DraftKings prices up the defenses a little bit more, so you're getting a little bit discounted prices. $4,800 for Packers, $3,200 for Eagles. So those make nice filler options, and they also really help with the narratives you're trying to build, because if you pick a team stack of one team, maybe you throw the defense in there too, and just go 5-1.
And hope for a blowout or something.
Yeah, just hope that one of the teams puts up an egg, or just gets one touchdown, and you got the guy who scores it or something like that.
So let's just talk a little bit about that roster construction with defenses. It's something I struggle with in showdown slates, because it's kind of counterintuitive to put these defenses in when so much of their scoring is well, not so much, but a part of their scoring is based on how many points that they don't allow to the other team. And if you're stacking it up with points with players from the opposite offense, that can be problematic. However, sometimes defenses score via other ways. So what is your general strategy when you're rostering defenses in these showdown slates? Are you using them in correlation with the opposing offense at all? Or are these strictly used to kind of build narratives in your head where you're like, okay, I've got a 5-1, the defense, the running back, if this game blows out and the other team runs the ball a lot, then this is the game script and the narrative that this lineup would win with?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the luxury of not taking guys from both sides, so you just hope to have the guy that scores the most on the opposite side. Hope they have a bad day. But one strategy I do like is stacking up both defenses. I think that creates a strong narrative that maybe the game is a low-scoring affair. People always like to play fantasy for the high scores, but I think the possibilities that go off in a low-scoring game are a little bit undervalued. So maybe going both defenses can be a good strategy.
I like that. All right, let's wrap things up. We got about 10 minutes before kickoff. Ben, give me one player that you're higher on in the field and one player that you're lower on the field for this slate. So
I'm higher on Miles Sanders than most. I really think that's how the Eagles are going to attack, and he has multiple. What I look in Showdown is not just narratives with the teams, but with the players. And I think there's a lot of different scenarios where Miles Sanders has a good game. It doesn't have to just be one specific script. Who I would be lower on in the field is actually the Eagles' defense. I didn't get there, and it's simply because when I play a defense, I know there's some other ways. One of the things I like to see is a quarterback that can really make some big mistakes. Aaron Rodgers, he takes a good amount of sacks, but he rarely makes an egregious pick six or something like that. So unless they generate a ton of pressure, it's not someone, where you got like Jameis and you're just like, oh, this guy's going to throw 4 touchdowns and 4 pick sixes. This is what I'm talking about. Aaron Rodgers is a little more conservative in that regard. So I didn't get to the Eagles defense much, if at all.
All right, I like it. Alex, you got one player that you're higher on and one player that you're lower on?
I'll go with the Eagles defense. I mean, if Ben doesn't have them, then they
all right.
be
Well, that's good. That means one of us has to win, right? Beautiful.
But seriously,
Nice.
I do have the Eagles defense a good amount, so I'm pretty nervous about this. But
I think I should be a little more nervous than you. But
I think that if Packers are going to get most of the ownership, then maybe stacking up all the Eagles could be a good strategy.
All right, little contrarian move there. I like it. Is there anyone, Alex, that's standing out to you that's just getting too much ownership tonight?
Well, I think JJ Arcega-Whiteside probably will. By people who aren't really following the information quite as much. I think that I'll have to take a look at the ownership again, but yeah, come back to me in 1 sec.
Sounds good. All right, my players, I am high on Mac Hollins. I think I've been talking him up all game. He's been great lately. 7 targets last game with Deshaun Jackson out. He's kind of in that role, though he does move a little bit to the slot on occasion. Player that I am lower on, I'm going to go with both of these Packers running backs. I just don't see them trying to run the ball on this Eagles. I don't see them having much success running the ball on this Eagles front. And I think they're going to be, I think their game plan going in is going to be to pass on this depleted and banged up and terrible secondary. So it's been the Eagles' weakness for a long time, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Packers at home. Give me the Green Bay Packers passing offense, and I'll go with, if I have to choose one, I'll go with Marquez Valdez-Scantling as the sneaky play to put in your captain spot. Maybe we're seeing a change of the guard. Devontae Adams hasn't been super involved or as involved as he has been in the past, or maybe we'll just see a Devontae Adams breakout game. That could happen too. So I like both of those guys tonight, though. All right. So we got let's maybe just talk a little bit about general lineup construction here for tonight's game. Ben, what's your kind of favorite go-to lineup construction overall? If you're putting your favorite player in the captain spot, how are you building out the rest of that lineup?
So for me, with both teams, I have I don't want to say a pretty good idea, but I think I know what units I want to attack. As we talked about for the Packers, I think it's more predominantly pass catchers. And for the Eagles, I think they try to really establish it on the ground. So what I really did was, naturally I grouped Aaron Rodgers with some of his pass catchers, loaded them up, and then I ran it back with some of the guys in maybe the Eagles backfield that I liked, mostly Miles Sanders. And then you fill in from there. The pricing I thought had pretty reasonable plays up and down it. There wasn't too many dead ranges. Sometimes we see that where it's like, wow, there's no one within $2,000 either way of this price point. I found that I was able to get someone I was comfortable with at most price points, so it made it pretty easy to build with that strategy.
Alex, how about yourself?
General lineup construction.
Yeah, just like who's your top captain? Who's your top captain pick tonight, and how are you building out the rest of that lineup if you're centering it on that captain in an ideal situation?
On FanDuel, like both quarterbacks, a captain, there seems to be some aversion in the industry to going quarterback captain, but they really do have a much higher chance of being the top scoring players on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I like a mix of some of the different receiving options. Ertz, Jeffrey, Valdez-Scantling. I also like Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, but I'm not ending up as many captain quarterbacks.
Awesome. Alex, tell us a little bit about what we've got, and just in case people want to sign up really quickly and use some of these tools that we have to build your lineups, including Fantasy Cruncher and your latest new addition to our Awesemo Premium lineup, which is your top showdown and single game plays for DraftKings and FanDuel.
Yeah, man. Thanks for queuing me up here. I think one of the things that we realized last year is that there's tremendous interest in Showdown, and it's hard to find good information out there. So we have a lot of content. We have Emacs free article published every primetime slate. We got Chris Bags making videos for free on YouTube as well, and of course Live Before Lock. And if you really want to take your game to the next level, then we offer a lot of tools behind the paywall that help you do that. We offer the Showdown projections that'll help you optimize your lineup to get the best players in there for the amount of salary you have to work with. The ownership projections. If you want to be a superb GPP player, you need to balance the projection with the ownership because there's only so many ways you can make a highly projected lineup. And then we have the top stacks tool, which combines both. The top for Showdown, that's just who are they going to be the top scoring players of the night, and I give my probabilities of each player being the highest scoring player. And if you compare that to the ownership of each player, that'll give you a great idea of who to target to make money on these slates.
That's all you need. Just take it down.
Print fast. There you go. Look at that.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. We will let you get to the game here. Just a reminder, we do have lots of great content. We have Adam Pfeiffer's matchups article out right now. He goes through every single game on the slate and breaks it down. As well, he's going to be doing an Adam Pfeiffer matchups column podcast, reading it to you if you want to go to the gym and just listen to it. So big fan of that. Can't wait till it comes out. Ben and I are on the betting show tomorrow. Alex, you and I are going to be breaking down Yahoo and building lineups tomorrow for the $1 Million Baller. Lots going on over on the Awesemo YouTube channel, so stop on by, check it out, and good luck tonight. We will see you back here next Thursday night.